My boyfriend said to me last night, we were trying to sort of get wording around Project WooWoo. And he goes, from an acting standpoint, though, what's Project WooWoo about? I go, it's about me. And he went, wait. So when the actor comes in, they're there to support you? I went, yeah. I can't do it without them, but they're making my dream come true. So I think people listen because we don't watch Oprah because of the guests. We watch Oprah for Oprah. Not that I'm Oprah or even close, but don't we all want to be Oprah somehow, some way?
You're listening to The Creative Impostor, episode number 90. Welcome to The Creative Impostor. I'm Andrea Klunder, your guide on this journey of creating your life and work. Have you ever experienced that rare and specific feeling of finding your creative home? You know, that one mode of expression that feels just right, the people who get you, and the voice that comes from your deepest, most authentic self? How exactly do you get there? And then, how do you inhabit and make it your own once you've arrived? My guest, Lisa Orkin, creator and host of the comedy self-help podcast Project WooWoo, voice actor and creative director, found exactly that in podcasting. And lest you think this episode is only about how amazing we obviously both think podcasting is, listen closely because it's a lot more than that. This latest installment in our series on voice will continue in just a moment, but first, I have two amazing invitations for you. One, you've been hearing me say this, episode 100 of The Creative Impostor is coming this spring, and there is still time for you to be a part of it. All you need to do is pick an episode from the past that has really spoken to you or inspired you or given you an aha moment or made you think or helped you to realize that you're really not alone on this creative path. And to refresh your memory, I have compiled a list of all of the titles of all of my interview episodes since day one over at thecreativeimpostor.com/title list. Of course, conveniently linked for you in the show notes for this episode inside your app and at thecreativeimpostor.com/090 for episode 90. Okay, once you've selected the episode, or maybe not even a whole episode, maybe it's just the title that speaks to you and lights something up within you, whether or not you've actually listened to the episode. And then tell me a story. Tell me how that has resonated in your life. And when I say tell me, I mean tell all of us listening. Because guess what? You're not the only one listening. I know you feel like it, but you're not. Tell all of us exactly what unfolded for you. For better, for worse, for tears, for laughter, for joy, for utter humiliation. Whatever it is, I would love to know how the topics in The Creative Impostor over the past few years have been affecting you, have been supporting you, have been making you go, Record a short story for me, maybe 1 to 3 minutes-ish, and send it to Andrea at thecreativeimpostor.com with the subject line, episode 100. It doesn't have to be polished. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can just record it on a voice memo on your phone and send it. Totally fine. Guess what? My job is editing and producing podcasts, so I will make you sound amazing. Originally, I was saying that the deadline was January 1st, but I'm extending that. I would say if you can get this recording to me by the end of February 2020, we'll be good. And invitation number 2, are you a podcaster? Or is this the year that you become a podcaster? March 6th through 8, 2020, I'll be at PodFest in Orlando, Florida, along with lots and lots of very kind, very fun, very pod-loving people who not only are welcoming, but passionate and knowledgeable about both the craft and culture of podcasting. And even better, Sunday morning, I'll be offering an interactive session called Let Your Voice Shine. Practice finding more freedom and flexibility with your number one podcasting tool, your voice. And still better yet, you could come for free. Well, at least your pass to PodFest could be free. I have a complimentary pass to give away at my discretion to someone in my community. And so, if you want that pass and you can find a way to get yourself to Orlando that weekend and a place to stay, here is how to enter the giveaway. Send me a short audio recording. I know, again, with the audio recordings, I can't help it. I love it. And it gives me more content to share on my shows. And then everyone doesn't have to always listen to me all the time. So send me a short audio recording. 1 to 3 minutes is totally fine. Include your name, the name of your existing podcast, or your idea for a show, one great unexpected win or benefit you've had from podcasting so far, or how you hope to benefit, and one challenge or opportunity that you're working with this year. Email that recording to me. Again, Andrea at thecreativeimpostor.com with the subject line PodFest Pass. This one has a very short deadline, January 20th, 2020. So that's 1/20/20. And I will announce the winner of the giveaway January 25. And now, with no further ado, find out exactly what drives a career content creator to inhabit her own authentically quirky voice and help her clients to do the same with the one and only Lisa Orkin. All right, so we're going to do a little thought experiment.
Okay.
We are recording this interview before attending and being on a panel together at She Podcasts Live in Atlanta, but listeners will probably be listening to this after that has already taken place. So rather than asking you what you're excited about for She Podcasts Live, I'm going to ask you to imagine that it has already happened.
Okay.
We've already been there. We've already experienced this first ever conference, and you've come home. What do you imagine your experience has been like, or what do you imagine your biggest takeaways have been?
Well, I think that hanging with all the people that I just see online and talk to online that I have forged amazing relationships with, I feel like that would make me super happy. And that felt really good to just sit and hang and talk about podcasting and life and how we're going to move forward and meeting lots of people who see what I do and how I can help them. And dorky dancing with a lot of people because I love to dorky dance. I think that's my biggest takeaways, and that I'm in the right place, that podcasting is the right place for me, that I have found a place that feels like home.
I love that. I knew that you would play this experiment with me because of the nature of your current podcast, Project WooWoo, which we'll talk about in a second. But tell me a little bit more about what you mean by this idea of podcasting being the right place for you, because I think that sometimes people think of podcasting as a tool for something or as a piece of content that they are creating or as a strategy. And I hear you saying it's a lifestyle, a community, and a place.
I know that a lot of people use it as a tool, and I would totally help them use it as a tool. But for me, I have been performing and acting and in radio audio and creating little stories on audio and voice acting my entire life. And I worked in TV and film, and I've always put myself out there as an actor and a performer doing solo shows and storytelling. And all of those things didn't feel completely like the place I should be. And working in radio, I worked with my dad, and my dad, he was the guy that everybody really wanted, not me. Even though I was the person behind the scenes, writing it all, voicing it all with him, it was him they were interested in. So it never felt like mine.
Mm.
And I felt like I could never be him. And sometimes people would remind me of that.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. People aren't so nice sometimes. Or like they'd be like, "We really want your dad on the spot with you." Well, now he's passed away. I always say, "Well, that would be really hard. If you could make that happen, I would totally be into it since he's not here on this plane anymore." So podcasting, I feel like I can take all of my performance, all of my know-how when it comes to creating audio and producing and directing myself and my comedy years. And it all sort of comes together in a world I understand, which is voice and story and audio. And then there's all these other people that also are sort of in the same place I am. They're not radio people because they're too cute for that. And maybe they were actors or they want to be actors or they're performers of some sort. And I just feel like it's a place where we all sort of come together. Like, I know it's my people. I don't know how to even say that. I just know it's my people.
What do you think is the difference between radio people and podcast people, or radio community and podcast community?
There's lots of rules in radio. I think there's lots of rules and people like those rules. But there's laws. You can only go so far on radio. So I think in podcasting, it's like the Wild West. And right now, there's no boundaries. So you can swear, you can push the boundaries, talk about things that nobody wants to talk about. And because it's invitation, you don't have to listen to it if you don't like it. And it's like, if you like this, what I'm doing, you come to my little party, my own little private radio station party.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about your current private little radio station party of Project WooWoo. I am so fascinated by the concept behind it, and I'm curious how you describe this show and what on earth you were thinking, where the idea came from.
So originally, I was working for a bunch of podcasters who have really, really successful wellness and self-help podcasts. And I'm into them as well. I like to listen to them. And originally, the idea was to have a fake show about wellness and self-help. And that sort of was my first thing. It was almost for the people that were exhausting themselves listening to self-help, that I was like, oh, I'm going to have my friends actually be these self-help people. And quickly I realized that most of my friends have no idea who Brene Brown is, or any of these people that I listen to, or any of that. I have this weird fascination with self-help that most of my friends, who are all brilliant voiceover comedians, actors in Los Angeles that are professionals, and we have all worked together for 20 something years. So I know them all really well. I thought, oh, it gives them a place to play and a place for me to play. And then eventually I realized I had to open it up. Also, the other thing too, I was doing another podcast. I'm a little all over the map, but I was doing another podcast where I had to get guests every week. Mm-hmm. And it was more of a self-help podcast. And I got tired of that.
That was Honestly Lisa?
That was Honestly Lisa. I was getting people to help me figure out my life. I quickly realized no one can help me figure out my life. No one. And I got tired of no's. I mean, I had some good guests on there, and it's still out there in the world. But like, I'd have people like my rabbi on, but then I'd also have like JP Sears on. Right. So it would just go back and forth a lot. And I just wanted to talk to anybody I wanted to talk to. And because not everybody would call me back or want to do my show, I just thought, I'm going to make my friends play the people I want to talk to. So if I want the Dalai Lama on my podcast, I'm just going to make my buddy be the Dalai Lama for me. Or if I want Brene Brown, or if I want John Kennedy, or if I want Amelia Earhart, or if I want Bob Dylan, I'm just going to make my friends do it. And they're so brilliant. They can do it.
And now, are you scripting these interviews with these famous people played by your actor friends?
No, it's fully improvised.
Whoa, I totally thought you were scripting them.
No, it's fully improvised. But here's the thing, is that we're all professionals here. So we can do that. If you've been on stage for 20 years, you can do that. If this is what your living is. And I do edit a little bit, but no, they're fully improvised. I make them learn as much as they possibly can about the person. I mean, really dig deep. And then I get them in studio and I refuse to let them be anyone else but the person I'm talking to.
That's funny. I think I was listening to the episode with Byron Katie.
Oh, yeah.
And Byron Katie is somebody in the self-help world that I listen to a lot, and I enjoy listening to her podcast. And it cracks me up because it's one of those things where her process, it's so straightforward. It's so simple. It's always the same, that there are hundreds of episodes of people bringing this challenge, this problem, and the process that she goes by, that she works with them, is always exactly the same. Like, it does not change. And so when I listened to the episode, I was just laughing because it was so spot on.
Yeah, this is so interesting. John, not usually this kind of actor, he actually went to one of her like weekends and was really into Byron Katie.
Okay.
I think that one I had to like literally, I think I edited out like 20 minutes of it. It was like a 40-minute interview, and I think we got it down to 25, and that was the week I took mushrooms, so it was a wild week, and so he really knows her, and he really loves her, and I think that's the secret sometimes.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're asking somebody to embody the voice of someone else almost, which
Yeah.
is kind of interesting because it's not exactly like, let's say, Saturday Night Live, where, yes, you're doing a sketch as another character who's a real person, but you're actually improvising an interview, a serious interview as that other person. And I find it really interesting, this idea of embodying somebody else's voice.
Yeah, and literally, like, sometimes men play women and women play men, and I always say to them, they don't have to do the voice. Like, I almost prefer them not because sometimes they get tripped up on
Yeah.
trying to imitate the person, and I want them to embody the person more than I want the voice. I mean, some of them, like the guy who did John Lennon, Jamie Albrecht, and he also did George Burns, he does that for a living,
Hmm.
and so it was really easy for him to do it without thinking about it.
Yeah. Because you also work in this space. So you're not just creating Project WooWoo as like, this is a fun thing to do and podcasting is my hobby. This is also your work, your career. You are assisting other podcasters and businesses with their shows. Do you think of your show as marketing? Is it part of your business or is it mostly just play?
Well, I guess it's a little bit like a card, but honestly, I think it's mostly play. I think as a someone who helps podcasters, it's important that I understand what it's like to podcast,
Hmm.
but it's both. It's a little bit of both. It's marketing just because I have a podcast,
Right.
and more and more, I don't sell anything on there. As time goes by, the only thing I tell my audience to do basically in the last couple episodes is join my mailing list or share it with a friend,
Hmm.
but I want it to be fully about the content, and that's really my goal, like, can I do the most interesting content? And I have discussions all the time with actors about it. Some of them are a little more serious, and
Yeah.
some are really funny, and some are a little bit of both,
Yeah.
and I never know what it's gonna be. The funniest actors in the world will suddenly get super serious on me.
It gives them an opportunity to do something different than what they're used to, right?
Yeah, and suddenly they've done so much research and they're so in their head about it. I'm like, holy cow. So my boyfriend, who's a classical actor, Shakespearean actor, very well known in LA for his classical chops, he did JFK yesterday, but he also did Dr. Ruth for me. And he was hilarious as Dr. Ruth, but he studied really hard. And JFK, you'll hear in like 2/3 of the way through, I say to him, because he's so stuck in his papers, I'm
Mhm.
like, "So, John, look at me." Sometimes I have to ground the actor, and you'll hear me once in a while getting them away from, like, trying to stay on their script that they planned,
Yeah.
and I just sort of go, "Look at me. Oh, look at your eyes. What pretty eyes you have," just to try and get them grounded and with me
Yeah.
instead of, am I doing service to the person I'm playing?
Yeah, and I'm curious how that skill of sort of coaching and maybe a little bit of directing your guests on your show, how that transfers over to working with clients. So, in the podcasting space, what kinds of things are you helping clients to do, and what kinds of clients are you working with?
I do a few different things. I've been a little bit of the go-to person for some of the big podcasters when they have sponsor ads. I help them rework the sponsor ads so they're not 10-minute long commercials in the beginning of their podcast. I
Uh-huh.
try really hard to get them down to a minute, find the actual copy points that are important and the story around it. So for the last year, I've been writing for Jonathan Fields. He just sends me all the stuff that the sponsors want, and then I just make it into a 30-second ad or a 60-second ad for him. And then I also edit, and then I also help people start podcasts. And then sometimes people will come to me with an already done podcast, and I will help them sort of up their ante in it, get them better, performing. And I still make a lot of radio commercials. That's still a part of what I do as well.
Do you think of podcasting specifically as voice work?
I think people should think that. I think that if you're a podcaster, your voice is your paintbrush, you better have a good handle on it. And I think a lot of times that's where podcasters sort of miss it. Yeah, they might be an amazing coach, but they have no idea how to talk to an audience through just their voice and tell a story. And so I think I help podcasters mostly figure out what their story is.
And then if they're grounded in that story, then that will naturally affect the way that they use their voice, or do they need specific coaching on sort of technique?
I think that will really inform how they use their voice. I do think there's a little bit of technique involved, but I think that stuff's all pretty minor. I think the hardest part is to get to the most authentic part of themselves and then up the ante slightly so it sounds compelling enough to listen to.
When you say up the ante, what do you mean?
Let's say we're walking down the street and somebody falls down or there's a car accident and we turn our head, it's because there's action going on. There's a little bit of conflict going on. It's compelling. It makes us turn our head. And I think in podcasting, it's the same thing. You need to have a little bit of drama
Mhm.
and something that makes you stay listening. So are we doing a podcast and that podcast is talking directly to the person? They're like, "Yeah, that's me. That's me. Oh, that's completely me. How did they fix that? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." So I think that there's a way it works, but it's just learning to talk to people. It's super intimate podcasting.
I struggle with how to communicate that with my business clients for podcasting. So, a lot of times, a business or a representative of a business or an organization, like a nonprofit, will come to me. And what they want is they want me to edit their podcast. And what I feel like they need is someone to consult creatively on their podcast
Mhm.
because their show is so boring, like so boring. And I have a hard time communicating the idea of drama and conflict and storytelling. I know that you're representing your company and your brand, but nobody wants to just listen to you sit there and be an expert for 20 minutes. Nobody is going to be compelled to tune into the next episode if you're just talking about how amazing the work that your company is doing is.
It's very hard to get clients to understand that. It's very, very hard. I don't know if I have a good enough answer for that at all. I think I've spent the last 20 years of my life saying to them, we need a story that people relate to. Something I say a lot to clients. It's not about you. You're not your customer. You're not your listener. So if you're doing it for you, for your ear, you're missing the boat because you need to do it for your customer, your listener.
Oh, yeah. How to get them out of boring podcast territory.
I worked with this one guy in advertising. He literally used to say to people, "Oh, boring, boring. I don't care." He was so brustly. I don't think I could quite be like that. He'd be like, "Oh, I don't care. Don't care." They'd be like, "What if?" Nope, don't care. Like literally, he would just be like, "I'm so bored by this." And so I think it's just being really confident in what you know
Yeah.
and just saying, "Look, I really want you to have the best product you possibly can, but you're not going to have it without a personal story that speaks to your listener."
Yeah. And that goes for ad reads as well.
Mhm.
The ad read is a really challenging, you think it's not that challenging, but it can be really hard for people to do authentically in a way that doesn't immediately make the listeners want to skip.
Yeah, and that's what they hire me to do. They hire
Yeah.
me to come in and try and help them figure that out. The truth is, I think the host read ad is not the smartest way to
Huh.
do it. I've never thought that. I think it's almost like we fell into 1957, the Lux Radio Hour. It's like we've really gone past that.
Uh-huh.
And we don't really need to do that. It's the cheapest way, and that's why
Uh-huh.
they do it. But it's not the best way because sometimes, that host is a terrible reader. One of my clients is horrible. Every time I give him well-written copy, he sounds like he's reading.
Yeah.
I give him hints. I'm like, "All right, you have to speed read it 5 times, and then you have to flip it over and just improvise it from your head."
Yeah. Back in college, I did an internship with a video production company in Michigan, and we did a lot of local TV ads for small businesses. And I was always so surprised by how many local businesses, like the business owner, really wanted themselves to be in the ad or like their
Yeah.
son to be in the
Yeah.
commercial. And with video, it's even worse. If you're a lawyer or a car salesman or something, you're not necessarily going to be the best person for your TV spot.
Yeah, I always say to clients, "Well, okay, I'm gonna come in and sell some cars then, okay? Can I give you a root canal? Because because you want to do my job. So, yeah, it looks like an easy job, but reading copy is really hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It takes years for people to really get a good handle on how to read copy.
And I think that's something that a lot of content creators, whether it be podcasters or people who are using audio and video to promote their work or build their brand or whatever it is, I hear that struggle a lot where people are like, should I script out my content and read it? But then I sound like I'm reading, or should I do it improvisationally? But then I get off track and I forget what I'm going to say and I get nervous.
I think scripting it is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I think scripting it, even if you don't use that script, get it all out into like a really succinct script. And then if you want to make bullet points off of
Mhm.
the script, that would be the way to do it. I think a lot of times people don't want to do all the work involved.
Yeah.
They just want to write it and read it or improvise it. And I think what they don't realize is that most of the people that do sound improvised, they've been usually selling on radio or on TV for years.
Yeah.
And so they're really good at making it happen really quickly. So my best tip, I think, and even when I teach voiceover actors, I say write it all out, speed read it like 5 times, say it really slow a couple times, flip your paper, improvise it, and record the whole time.
Uh-huh.
And somewhere in there, you're going to find it. So for like a professional voiceover actor, we have 2 shots. And a lot of time we don't get the copy until we walk into the studio, into the
Wow. Yeah.
booth. So we have to just cold read it and make it sound real. I think that's what people don't realize mostly, that how fast are you on your feet and how quickly can you make it sound real? And if you can do those 2 things, you're golden.
Is there any secret that definitely helps you to do that, to be quick with copy?
Insane amounts of practice.
Yeah.
And literally, that's why I'm like, read it 10 times fast, 5 times slow. Read it the way you think it sounds really well. Read it really dramatically. Read it a bunch of like every single way you possibly can. And eventually you'll come to something real.
Yeah. And do you think listening back to yourself too, like listening to, I hate listening. I hate listening back to myself, but I know that it's important to do that.
I think it's really helpful to listen. Eventually, you don't care. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I have no attachment to it whatsoever. Now, on video, I have great attachment. Like,
Oh,
oh, look at my chin. Oh my
yeah.
gosh, look at my skin. So I have no attachment whatsoever. And I think it's because I've had to hear myself thousands and thousands of times that I'm like, oh, I thought I was doing that. I think a lot of times too, it's really important, especially as you're new
Uh-huh.
and you're just starting to listen to yourself, because you'll think that you did it really well.
Yeah.
And then you listen back and you're like, boy, I don't sound like I did that well at all.
Yeah. Have you always had a really positive or maybe even detached relationship with your voice, or do you think that's just come over time? Like, how would you describe your personal relationship with your voice right now?
I think it's come over time. I have a really specific voice. So, like, I know I'm not going to do perfume commercials. I'm not really good at reading like super straight copy because I sound a little like a sketch, like I'm doing a Saturday Night Live sketch. So, if it's like, something for a medical group, probably not going to be me. So, I had a long road with voiceover. At first, I sounded like I was reading, and I had an amazing mentor, my father, who really broke me of that
Mhm.
and taught me a lot. And I think it's taken time. And now I just actually like my voice. And I think as I get older, it gets a little deeper and a little richer and better sounding. But I think it takes time. I think it's just because I've heard it 1,000 times.
That's one of the things that I love about audio is that you can sort of let go of some of the hangups that come from physical appearance. I feel like we're a very physically, visually oriented society, and in terms of image and things like that. And then with audio, it's like you can relax. Some of that pressure comes off. From your perspective, what do you think it is about audio that keeps this medium growing and changing and evolving? Like, what is it about audio that's like the secret sauce?
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on with audio. First of all, you can listen to it while you clean your house. You can listen in your car while you drive. You can listen on a walk. You don't have the visual component, so you can do it while you do other things. And I think like radio used to be, it sort of just becomes your buddy. You can listen while you fall asleep, when you get up, and it's in your ear. So it's super intimate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of it. We don't all have time to look at the phone. Like if you're sitting waiting in line, you just put your earbuds in, you can listen to something you really want to hear.
And for people who struggle with listening to their own voice or with trusting the sound of their voice, trusting that in this intimate medium of audio, that their voice is the one that someone is going to want to fall asleep to or have their afternoon cup of tea with or wake up to in the morning with coffee, what advice do you have for somebody, or what do you tell somebody who's like struggling to feel really confident about their voice? Or even more specifically to what you said, someone who's trying to figure out what kind of voice they have and where it fits.
First of all, I think with voiceover, because it's such a weird, almost dying sort of art these days, just because everybody can do one from their computer. So
Mm,
people don't want to hire professionals as much anymore because we're a lot more expensive. So I think that's just practice. I think just taking voiceover classes
mhm,
is probably a great idea. Even if you're a podcaster, take voiceover classes and learn how to use your voice and take improv classes and learn how to use your intellect in a fast way.
mhm.
There's some old quote, and I can't remember it, but it's something like, "You're not the judge. What you think about your voice doesn't mean anything." If you're telling a story and serving it out into the world, that's more important than what your voice actually sounds like to you.
Yeah. Do you ever struggle with imposter syndrome?
Well, every day, all day. Yeah, it's funny because I just went to a podcast festival over the weekend, and I was on stage the first night in, like, the opening night, sort of they did a little, like, game show, and I felt great. It was good. And then the next day, I was teaching my workshop on marketing, and they put me in, like, a little kitchen, and I had made this great, like, PowerPoint that I wanted to show with audio, and they didn't have the capabilities for any of that.
Oh.
And then sometimes I think, "Do I know what I'm talking about? Can I do this without my PowerPoint? Because I should be able to." Yeah, who am I to do Project WooWoo? I was uploading the new episode, which is JFK, and I'm like, "Is this really good? Is this good enough? It's JFK, is that, like, really going out on a limb? What was I thinking?" Yes, all the time. I go on an audition and I'm like, "Yeah, I would cast that person from the looks of them. They look much better than me." Yeah, all the time. Because, I think weirdly, it's not like we like, there's a fire and I know how to put it out. Or it's like I'm a dentist and I understand how to put a cavity in a tooth. It's very subjective. It doesn't even exist except in the ether, most of what I do.
Mhm.
And a lot of people think they can do it. So why do I think I'm better than them? I get it all the time. Obviously, I've had 20 years of experience behind a mic, but podcasting's still relatively new.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that they'll have a podcast for 3 months and suddenly go, "Oh, I coach podcasters." Really? So sometimes I'm like, "Am I that person?" I'm not, but I'll think that sometimes. Sure.
So how do you move past when those imposter-y feelings come up? Like, how do you move forward instead of just walking out of the audition and letting the other person who definitely looks much more right for the part have it?
This is what I tell myself, I really don't know anything.
Yeah.
I really don't know anything. So they could get it or I could get it. Or, I could assume nobody's listening to my podcast, or I can assume that 3 people have listened and they've loved it and I've made some movement. And I just try to walk away from those feelings as fast as I can. I try not to dwell in them, even though I want to.
Mhm.
I try to walk away as quickly as I can. I guess like if I was Danielle Laporte or something, I would say, quickly think of something that serves you. Like,
Mhm.
"Oh, look, I was kind to this person today," or "That person is really good for it, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna get it, and it doesn't
Mhm.
mean I'm gonna get it." We have no control over it. So I might as well just go, "I did my best, and if my best is good enough, that's all that really matters."
When do you most feel completely in your element? Like totally in flow, totally present, connected, authentic? What's an example of that?
I think sometimes when I'm on stage doing comedy and I'm connecting with the audience is when I feel the most. Or if I'm in studio and I'm interviewing somebody and we are really, really in it. I had like the Dalai Lama interview or
Uh-huh.
Carolyn Miss. It was like 2 minutes and it was over, it felt like. And we were just in it. I've been working on a scripted podcast, and I feel like when I'm in studio and I'm acting in that, I feel in my element. I guess it's all when I'm either performing or acting is when I feel most in my element.
Yeah. And then when you're listening back, either to something that you've created and recorded or you're listening back to things that you've directed or worked on with other people, what are you looking for or what are you listening for in order to say, like, yes, that was a solid performance? What are your measures for success?
Does it sound authentic? I think I'm always looking for that really authentic sound. And then also there's this, I don't know how to describe this, but there's almost like a tightrope during a performance or a voiceover. It's full on commitment and authenticity. And I think if I have those two things, then you know you can work with that person. That even if they're totally off the mark of what I was looking for, but they're fully committed and they sound authentic, I may hire them anyways because I know I could just direct them into the direction I want.
Before the official interview started, you were talking about your professional business of podcast producing and consulting and editing, which is called Podcast Pizza.
We're making our own content that we love, that maybe we have a sketch show that a bunch of amazing people are working on, a political sketch show that I sort of guide and hop in and out of, that I have my scripted podcast, which is going to be a comedy. I have Project WooWoo, and then I'm so busy working on all of those that I really have no client work going on. That would be my dream. Not that I don't like working with clients. My boyfriend said to me last night, we were trying to sort of get wording around Project WooWoo. And he goes, from an acting standpoint, though, what's Project WooWoo about? I go, it's about me. And he went, wait. So when the actor comes in, they're there to support you? I went, yeah. I can't do it without them, but they're making my dream come true.
Yeah.
So I think people listen because we don't watch Oprah because of the guests. We watch Oprah for Oprah. Not that I'm Oprah or even close, but don't we all want to be Oprah somehow, some way? So
Okay, this is so important that you said that because I think that a lot of new podcasters are so focused on getting big name guests or the right guests or guests with a large following onto their shows. Like that is going to be the secret to their success. And the truth is that, yes, that might help your keyword searchability, perhaps. And yet, what will keep listeners coming back is the relationship that they build with you as the host. And so, no matter
exactly.
who the guest is, it really comes down to whether they feel like they know, like, and trust you, right? To use that very cliche phrase.
Yeah. Either they want to be you or they're so glad they're not you is why they follow you.
Or they're so glad they're not you.
Yeah. I'm just going to watch her fall down really hard. It makes me feel better about my life.
That's so funny. Do you know when I started watching soap operas in high school and then in college, somebody once said to me, like, why do you watch this garbage? And I was like, are you kidding? Watching how horrible and miserable these people's lives are, these fake people's lives are, makes me feel so much better about my life.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think that's a really good point. I also say to people too, people are like, I only have a couple hundred listeners. Well, good, because you're not ready for more.
Mm,
Make it be a slow build.
yeah.
Because as you get better, your audience grows and hopefully no one listens to your first shows.
Yeah, it takes time.
It takes a lot of time. And, I think that's too where it takes more than a year for sure of consistently podcasting. It can take years. You got to be in it for the long haul.
Any advice for how people can stick it out in the meantime and not give up?
Don't podcast for results, podcast because you're making something you believe in. And make it about that. Make it about the art of what you're doing. Make it about something you believe that you want to put into the world. And don't worry about feedback. When I was doing solo shows in LA, I'd be lucky if I got like 10 people in an audience until closing weekend, and then everybody would come. But for the 8 weeks that I'm doing the show, I'd be lucky if there'd be 15 people in an audience.
Yeah.
And so if you have just like 3 listeners, you have 3 listeners, 3 people that want to hear what you have to say. So give them something. Like, that's okay. We don't have to teach the masses. We only have to relate to a person at a time.
All right, Lisa, last question. Is there anything else that you didn't get to say or that we didn't talk about, or anything else, message, words of wisdom, divine insight, anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Just, you're not the judge of you. I think that's the thing. Like, quit judging yourself. Literally, you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for others. And so don't worry about what you sound like, what you feel like while you do it. It doesn't really matter. What matters is, are you relating to somebody? Are you serving somebody? Or are you having fun? Because if you're doing it all this time for free and you're not having fun, then don't do it. Don't go eat chocolate or something.
Make something you believe in. Quit judging yourself and have fun. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks, Lisa. Links to all things Lisa Orkin will be in the show notes for this episode at thecreativeimpostor.com/090 for episode 90. And don't forget, we're just 10 episodes away from episode 100. Send me your audio clip or short story to be included in that Creative Impostor episode 100 by the end of February, or 2, your short audio recording about your podcast or your podcast to be for my other show, Podcast Envy, for the PodFest Pass giveaway by January 20th, 2020, or send me both. This episode was mixed by Edwin Ruiz. Our theme music is by Jovia Armstrong. I want to thank you, as always, so much for listening. And this week, I invite you to take a risk. Say something in a different way, and then say it again in a different way, and then again in yet a different way. And